we'll give it just a minute or so to let a few more join us. We had quite a few register today, so I want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to log in before we get started. This meeting is being recorded if some could not make it or if anyone wants to review again. So for that reason, I have muted everyone. We'll have some time for Q&A at the end. And at that time, everyone can unmute themselves. So just so you are aware, we're really glad that you're here this morning. So thanks for being here. I will just introduce myself because I'm sure many of you probably don't know who I am. I'm the newest member of the Lift Up the Vulnerable team. I joined in January, and my name is Sasha Nicole. I serve as the Operations and Advancement Officer for Lift Up the Vulnerable, and I actually reside in Minnesota in the Midwest. That's the state the furthest north that touches Canada. So that's where I am. So we're truly a remote team and all over. So without further ado, I think most are logged on now. So I will get started. This event is truly just for those of you who are monthly donors because you help sustain us in a way that one-time gifts, which are wonderful, they just offer levels of stability that allows us to be more strategic and more forward-thinking. So we really appreciate your partnership. It means truly the world to us. And so we want to give you a special insider look on what is happening in the field. So for today, as many of you know, or I hope you know, we have 3 team members who are based in Kenya who support our partners in Sudan and South Sudan, and they do a lot to make sure that our partners there are supported and equipped to do what they need to do to ensure that the children and the women that we serve are equipped and protected and healthy and able to flourish and thrive. So what they do in our field is incredibly important. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the baton to Eugenio, who is our Chief Program Officer in Kenya. And Eugenio, would you just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to be a part of the LUV team?
Thank you, Shasha. My name is Eugenio Kirema. I am the Chief Program Officer, Lift Up the Vulnerable. I've been working with the Lift Up the Vulnerable for the last 13 years, running the programs in our anti-human trafficking network in Sudan and South Sudan. And I'm also excited to introduce my 2 colleagues who joined us recently, Pauline and Eustace, the latest to come on board in Kenya to support the anti-trafficking network activities. And so I'll give them a chance to introduce themselves before I can proceed on. And Pauline, I can start with you. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. Team in December of 2022 to help, with the anti-trafficking network to help the women and children in Sudan and South Sudan. So mentorship and empowerment are really causes dear to me. I hope to continue that with love as part of the team. Thank you. I'll give the next chance to my colleague Eustace to go ahead and introduce himself as well.
Thank you. Good morning, and the team in the US, and good afternoon to my colleagues in Kenya. My name is Eustace Mwiti. I also joined Lift of the Vulnerable in December last year as a project coordinator. Before that, I worked with the government of Kenya and also in the private sector in Kenya. I also specifically worked in the area of mentorship and training of young people through a program run by government. So this opportunity came to me. When this opportunity came to me, it really touched me because I really love working in areas where I can touch people's lives. And immediately after we went for a visit there, it even became more exciting for me because I could see the work that we're doing, the work that Lift of the Vulnerable is doing is really changing lives. Thank you, and I look forward to learn more from the team.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for sharing a bit about your background. I think before we get into today's topic, it would be nice to hear a little bit about the update in Sudan and how our partners are doing. I'm sure many of our partners on this call today will be interested to know how everyone's doing. So, Eugenio, would you just take a moment and share with us a little bit, how are things going in Sudan and how are our partners doing?
Thank you, Shasha. Well, Sudan continues to face political and economic challenges, and this is coinciding, of course, with the violence which is involving the army led by the current sitting leader, Abdel Mohammed, and Amin Bulhani, and his deputy, Mohammed Dagalo. Dagalo apparently is the leader of a Lapin support service, which traces its roots into Darfur. It was used by the former president of Sudan to suppress the full uprising. And it's been, the tension has been rising among with the two leaders competing for power because apparently each of them looks at the other as a rival, and is reached the peak on the 15th of April when the two warring groups walked into the streets and started fighting each other. It's a difficult situation as we speak now in Sudan. The humanitarian crisis is growing each and every day. Millions of civilians have been caught up in the fighting, and there is a high risk of running short of the basic commodities. Of course, the consequences and the effect is being felt right now as we speak. There is fear that most of the hospitals don't even have medicine, and most of the head workers and head operations have been stopped due to insecurity. And more especially in the major towns of Khartoum and other major centers where both of the armies have footprints, and very strong footprints for that matter. And so there has also been widespread looting, especially in the major towns, breakages, people breaking in and looting supplies. But also, the most also catastrophic is the evacuation of all foreigners. It's been considered as probably next to what happened in Kabul, Afghanistan, when the American forces were getting out. It's been a disaster. One of the UK diplomats said it's actually the risk of getting out the evacuees from Khartoum or is like more dangerous than even what they had in Kabul. And so this definitely shows us the intensity of of the conflict in Sudan. Many people are also living in their houses without electricity, without water, and the temperatures are ranging to almost 40 degrees Celsius. This is really difficult for the citizens in Sudan. And so in relation to LUV anti-trafficking network, so far we've not been adversely affected, but at the moment there is a 72-hour ceasefire, which was declared by both parties, which is actually ending sometimes today, midnight, around midnight today. So there is a lot of uncertainty in terms of what people are going to expect next. Of course, with the majority of the foreigners having been evacuated, the civilians in Sudan are left at the mercy of these two warlords who have, for information, and the history of war. The deputy, who is the leader of Rapid Support Service, is fighting all the way from Darfur, and that's how he was noticed by the former leader. And he went through the promotions up to the level he is now. We are expecting probably the next few days are going to be very important for the whole of this region as we sit down and pray for peace. However, there is a lot of uncertainty that they might end up going to fighting again because this ceasefire was just for a period of time. So fortunately, through the support of our donors and supporters, through the support of our donors, we've just been able to track in food supplies in most of our locations, which will be able to take us all the way to December. But then that doesn't mean that if we are the only people with the food, there is no way we can be able to control that food if at all the conflict is gonna escalate. In one of our centers in Nuba Mountains, there is even a higher risk because as we speak now, there isn't any cross-border trade. There are some retro goods which are smuggled across the border, which keeps people in the Nuba Mountains moving. But the challenge now, they have also sealed the borders just to ensure that there are no armed people from the north who are coming into their region. And so that's another big issue and another big problem. So people who are living in the Nuba Mountains, and the Nuba Mountains has been suppressed by the Khartoum government for a long time. And so this eventually escalates the humanitarian crisis, and the need for humanitarian support becomes so big, not only in the Arab-controlled territory, but also in the Nuba Mountains, which is predominantly inhabited by the Black people. In the other centers, especially the one which is near Darfur, which really borders the Sudan, we have not seen any movement so far. But again, as I said, this is going to depend so much on what's going to happen in Sudan in the next few weeks. Our prayer is the international community is going to get in. I know a few regional bodies are trying to look for a solution to end the crisis. However, no one can predict. These are battle-handed warlords. No one can predict what's going to happen in the next few days. And so all what we can do is to pray. As at now, all anti-human trafficking centers are safe. Our children are safe. They have food. And as we even speak, we are working on dispatching some trucks with essential supplies to all the centers. So we really require prayers that as we dispatch the trucks and midst of all the crisis, they're going to be able to get to those places safely. So just in a nutshell, that's what I would share with the current situation in Sudan. And so my request is we continue praying for peace, we continue praying for understanding, and of course, for a quick resolution to the conflict so that the masses don't continue suffering. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eugenio. Appreciate your insights. And it's a relief to know that the children and women in our care are safe and protected at this time. And we really appreciate the background on that. So thank you. We'll switch gears a little bit because the three of you just last month took 2 site visits to 2 of our partner locations, our Father's Cleft and Hope for South Sudan. And it would be great to hear updates on how those visits went. I'm going to leave it fairly open-ended, but I'd like to just know, I have 2 questions, but the first one is, what did you find most hopeful about your visit? So Eugenio, can we begin with you?
Thank you, Shasha. Yeah, amid this all, what is happening, I think our anti-human trafficking centers remain pillars of hope in countries where over 70% of the population is illiterate. And education remains a key to change those communities. And I'm talking of education, I'm talking of increase in knowledge, increase in technical skills, or even an exchange. And so we have seen this is happening, it's happening very well in our institutions. And every year we have students who are graduating from primary to high school, and others who are graduating from high school and transitioning over to tertiary colleges, and some others are getting into even working for some of the organizations in the area. And so through education, that's one of the areas where we are transforming the societies. But of course, my colleague is going to be talking about agriculture. We have also pastors in our institutions who have remained, very influential and instrumental in the spiritual nourishment of our children. Majority of who are traumatized or have gone through some high levels of trauma. And so, in a nutshell, whatever is happening in our institutions, there is a lot which we can be able to celebrate. And eventually, our goal is to mold people who will grow up to be the change makers in their communities. Whether it's in terms of spirituality, they're going to be the change makers. Whether it's in terms of work ethics, they're going to be the change makers. And apparently also, institutions, those are some of some of the students of the children in our institutions are even the most learned people in their communities, in spite of them being probably even in primary school or high school. To get into their communities, there are no chances of getting education because of the levels of poverty. Infrastructure doesn't exist. Many people dying during the war. A lot of others are dying through diseases because, again, of the collapse of the key sectors.
Thank you, Eugenio. Pauline, we'd love to hear from you. And I believe this was, because you're fairly new, was this your first visit as well?
Yes, it was. It was my first visit.
Yeah.
Well, it coincided perfectly with my 31st birthday. So it was a way to celebrate.
Congrats.
Yeah. So we went straight to the Nuba Mountains at the beginning of our trip. So we left Nairobi, straight on to Juba. From Juba, we headed to Yida, and from Yida, we took about an 8-hour drive through the Nuba Mountains to Our Father's Cleft, the institution there. So it was really interesting to see the dynamic between the community there and everybody in the institution, the teachers, the support staff, and also the children. They are very well grounded. Of course, the teachers and the support staff really play an important role in that. So during the site visit on our second day there, on our first day there actually, because we did 2 site visits. On our first day there, we met a young man called Rambo. So Rambo is 18 years old. And it was really something because we interacted with him during the morning run first and foremost, then during the site visit. So our morning run was mostly taking part between 6 a.m. and 6:30 thereabout, right before it gets really hot, because during that time there, at times it was getting to 44, 43, 45 degrees Celsius, which is really hot. So we preferred to do the morning runs.
That's
so
over 100. Sorry, Pauline, can I just share? So in in Fahrenheit, 43, 45, that's over 100 degrees Celsius. So just Fahrenheit. So that's really, really uncomfortably hot. So just wanted to clarify that for our American attendees.
Yeah, thank you, Sasha. So during this early morning, this young man would wake up, he was ready, he was in the farm. He was there just growing, most of the leafy greens that the school consumes, some onion, and he was very vocal about it, and you could see the passion in him. So he told us that he wakes up and gets there at 6 a.m. so that it does not disrupt his schedule during the day. So he wakes up, gets up early in the morning, goes to the farm, makes sure everything is watered. Then he will proceed on to, go to class, and so that his visits to the farm do not disrupt his learning schedule. So it was also interesting that he's 18 years old and he's in, I would say by American standards, it's grade 9. So his early childhood was not too comfortable because he was mistreated by his family. His mom died passed on early on because of what they suspect to be breast cancer, because he says she was having chest problems. So, and of course there were lumps, there was pus. So when listening to that story, it was really, you see how far this gentleman has come. So after his mother's demise, his father, who was a soldier, would mistreat him fairly because of his physical appearance, and that is him in the photo there at the background, the middle, with the colored shirt. So so he would get mistreatment from his father because of his physical appearance. And during the time when his father was at war, this is around 2011 to 2013, it was actually his aunt who sneaked him into the institution. So, and he has been there since, and now he's also very forgiving. You can see that the team there has nurtured him. Over the years, he's built a relationship again with his father, and he says farming is his passion because his father is now a farmer. He wants to be like his father. So you can see it is, the institution has really played a really important role in his life, because, anyone else with that kind of mistreatment, that kind of rejection from your father, you wouldn't even want to possibly even hear of him or emulate him. So this is where you see like the impact that Lift Up the Vulnerable and, you know, in collaboration with the indigenous leaders there have an impact on such a young man whose life, you know, would have totally taken a different turn. So on the picture there, as you can see, that is Rambo with two of his friends. They were actually uprooting cassava that Rambo has grown on that patch of land. So he was uprooting the cassava to give to the Kenyan team for breakfast while we were at the institution. So it was really hopeful for me to see the impact that the institution has on these you know, children and the youth now, because if it wasn't for this, I don't know where Rambo would be. He's been at the institution for now a decade, because he got in there in 2013. And you can see he's very well adjusted. So you can see that the institution has a direct impact on him. And then again, when I was interacting with the staff there, it was really great to see that they are really committed to the children, to the institution. And then of course, the institution is making a very big impact in their lives, because without it, then obviously they wouldn't have had, you know, a source of income, a source of economic empowerment. So that is what really stood out to me. Yeah.
Thank you. That is a really beautiful transformation story. Thank you for sharing that. Eustace, I'd love to hear what was most touching for you. And was this also your first trip as well? Because you and Pauline started about the same time, if I remember.
Yes, thank you, Sasha. And yes, this was my first trip to Sudan and Southern Sudan. And for me, the highlight was in Torit, our second location where we visited, that is in Southern Sudan. Yeah, for me, the highlight is seeing these children, most of them actually are orphans, who have gone through very traumatic experiences in their lives and their very young lives. Seeing them having a place they can call a home and affording a smile, that for me was really the highlight of my visit. And talking about the traumatic experiences that they've gone through, we launched a youth running club at both centers, both at the Nuba Mountains and at Torit. This basically, the youth running club, the structure of this club is such that it entails having these children doing the physical exercises, the real running and the physical exercises, but beyond the physical exercises, this scientifically it's proven that these exercises will help these children develop both physically, mentally, spiritually. It helps in trauma management. So this club is structured in such a way that these children will be meeting their coaches weekly, having a session of around, let's say, 1 hour. They do fast exercises and then they go into a lesson. They have a lesson for each week. These lessons range from relating to God, discipleship, relating with each other, how to perform well academically, hygiene, diet, and such things. So basically, it helps them to grow as for some young children. So I was really touched to see these kids, the commitment from these kids, the commitment to voluntarily come for these exercises. And used to, as my colleague Pauline mentioned earlier, that we used to do this exercise very early in the morning because it can get really hot there in Sudan. So we could meet at around from 5:30 to 6 sometimes. And I mean, myself and Eugenio, sometimes we could go thinking we are very early, and then we find the children have already arrived and started organizing themselves, running. I mean, that sense of leadership and commitment and discipline at a very young age was really touching for me. That's something that I really love. And we hope that as this, because we have a curriculum for this running club, we hope that, and so far the report we're getting, even after we came back to Kenya, we've been getting reports from the coaches. The report of the progress has been very positive. The children are still doing wonderful, even some more. Those, because it's a voluntary registration, we are getting report that others are enrolling. So we hope this will continue helping them to grow, to manage trauma. Even seeing them how they happy during those exercises was really good. Young children smiling, even when you get the stories of the stories from the background, then you feel that it's something really touching. So all this will continue, and it will be able to change them and to help them for the good, for the better. So that for me was the highlight of my visit. Thank you.
Thank you, Eustace. We appreciate that. Yeah, I think truly everyone can benefit from that, but it's very interesting to learn that there's a connection between physical activity and healing. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. My next question is more of a broader question, a forward-thinking question. We have a video and we'll jump to that in a second. But my question is, what areas is LUV working to strengthen this year and in the coming years? So we'll watch a sweet little video and then we can segue into our question. Eustace, I'd love to hear what your vision is and what your thoughts are for the strengthening of LUV this year and in coming years.
Thank you. For me, okay, I think I'll talk about the education structure, infrastructure, and I will focus at this point at our location in Nuba Mountains. When we went there at Nuba Mountains, yes, I've been to hardship areas even here in Kenya, but that was a bit different for me. It was really a new level of hardship, I must say. So during our visit there, we passed through areas we could see, we have the director, Ezekiel, and could tell us, Eugenio, who has been there severally, could tell us this there is a school, that there is a school. And then looking at the school and what you call a school, it's just children studying under trees and others in grass structures. And then getting to our father's cave, OFC, you find very decent, modern infrastructures, classes for children. So for me, that Lift Up the Vulnerable is doing a really good work at that, because this was like having an oasis in a desert, like having a very beautiful thing in a very unexpected place, because comparing to other areas around there, that's like, it was really good. The work being done there is really good. The moment I saw the infrastructure at OFC, all I could say is, honestly saying, thank God to our donors and the Lift Up the Vulnerables, and this continue, because they are very decent classes and I see some work going on. Actually, from the time I joined Lift Up the Vulnerable in December, I have visited the Nairobi industrial area. I think walked down there more times than I've done in the last, I think, 4 years. While we are doing the sourcing of the materials to ship there, because as Eugenio had mentioned earlier, to put it into perspective, Nuba Mountains is a place with no structures at all, no government at all. So even the normal commerce is not it's very informal. They rely on the cross market with the northern part, the Khartoum part. So most of the supplies sometimes they get from Kenya. So I've been involved a lot in that, moving around here and there in Nairobi, trying to get some of these supplies to be shipped to the Nuba Mountains. Some of these are the building the supplies or materials. And I could see the work going on there. It's even getting better. So for all that, I would say God bless our donors and may this work continue. And we pray that the same continues in other centers. There also, we could also go for Southern Sudan to read very beautiful classes for the children and other Sunday structures, infrastructure. So we pray that this can continue even to higher levels. For me, that was the highlight. And I mean, we can continue even doing more in other areas, in other centers. Thank you.
Thank you, Eustace. I think it's really important for those of us who are stateside to be aware of how much solid infrastructure impacts so many other aspects of our society. Because here we take for granted that we have roads that function, we have schools that are free to attend for American citizens. So this is a very different reality for those of us who are here to understand that in this part of the world that is not a given, that there isn't a government system in place that provides education and ensures that the roads are safe and school buildings are built. And so it is really important that LUV as an organization helps to ensure that these infrastructures are solid, are in place for the children and the women in our care. So I really appreciate you highlighting that for us, because sometimes we think about the people, but we also need to think about the structures that provide for and protect the people too. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Eugenio, what would you like to see for the future of LUV? What would you like to see grow?
Thank you, Shasha. Yeah, again, as I started by saying that 70%, over 70% of the population, adult population actually does not know how to read and write. And I also say that education is one of the key pillars. That's one of the areas where LUV is investing so much and ensure that our children who are transitioning from secondary school are able to get into tertiary colleges, because again, in a country which is underdeveloped, where there is no infrastructure, the fact that one has gone through the formal education doesn't transition to empowerment. And so exchange of skills and knowledge becomes very critical. And Lift Up the Vulnerable for the last few years has been working very hard to get as many children as affordable into colleges, mid-level colleges, like teachers' colleges, nursing schools. We've got quite a number of children who are doing very well. And the expectation, of course, is that these are the same people who are going to come and teach in their communities. These are the same people who are going to come and, treat the sick in their communities. We also have a few children who are in universities and they have just completed with different degrees. But a game changer is where you're able to get as many children as possible into these mid-level colleges, because the impact is instant. For instance, with that population of illiteracy, then what it means is the South Sudanese or the Sudanese people have a disadvantage even when it comes to getting jobs. And I think South Sudan and Sudan is one of the, some of the places with the highest number of foreign workers. Unfortunately, also that at times doesn't work out so well because right now as you speak, if we rely so much on foreign workers, like now in Khartoum, when almost each and every foreigner has been evacuated, then there is a very high chance of stagnation, because the country is left with the people who don't have any knowledge. And so we are trying as much as possible to impart knowledge and give as many children as possible skills, so that they're able to get into their communities when they are whole. And as they walk out, of course, they have grown in our institutions where they have been mentored very well, where they've been spiritually fed, where they've been taught a lot in terms of what to expect or how to work out things, as opposed to probably those ones who just grow in the village and just know that the solution of, in order to get anything, one must fight. That's totally different from the children in our institutions. They are taught how to love each other. They are taught how to work hard. And so, yeah, we are looking at a whole component of a group, which is gonna get into their communities and be the change makers.
Thank you, Eugenio. That's beautiful. That's excellent. Pauline, I'd love to hear your thoughts too. What is your vision for the future and strengthening of LUV?
I will focus mainly on agriculture because while I was there at Our Father's Cleft OFC and also at Hope for South Sudan, there is great potential for agriculture. As you can see, this young man is, farming a lot there on a very small patch of land. It is, if I could quantify it, it's about 100 meters by 100 meters. That is where the land in South Sudan, what he's doing. And from that, he's getting enough to just, feed the school. So for me, I would definitely look into agriculture. Of course, there is what is going on there. There is potential for more because, for instance, in Tarit, Hope for South Sudan, we have capacity to do over 200 acres, but we cannot farm everything with our current resource. So for me, I would hope to grow agriculture because it means that the institutions, the staff, and the children there are fed directly from there rather than, tracking a lot of things from Kenya, because then it would mean they are, self-sustaining. And of course, it is more sustainable that way. Of course, the community can come in back to, for instance, if you're doing 200 acres of land, you have to bring in the community to help, with the manual labor and all that. So then that would translate to impacting largely the community through economic empowerment and also through empowering them on, better ways and more sustainable ways to practice agriculture, which ultimately would translate again to entire community development. So that said, again, we have to track in pesticides from Kenya and seeds, which means that, when there is uncertainty, for instance, right now, the Nuba Mountains, you don't know how the tide will flow from Sudan down that side. So you don't know if there will be enough, food to feed the children long term, depending on whatever happens. But should we develop agriculture at these institutions, we would be, very certain that regardless of whether the shipments come in from Kenya or not, the institutions have enough food to feed the kids and everybody around. So that said already, LUV is doing a lot in that regard. We have, for instance, we have farm managers in Our Father's Cleft, and we have another one in Hope for South Sudan. So Abdulazim in Our Father's Cleft is really doing well. He's basically mentored the young man I mentioned earlier. So, and through his mentorship, you can see that agriculture will continue to grow, whether Abdulazim is busy in other areas or, he's fully based in the institution, because if the children take it up, then we are very sure they will develop the love to continue farming and growing their own food, which means they will always be fed. And then, of course, hunger will reduce. At Hope for South Sudan, they also have Geoffrey, who's very dedicated. He's very in touch with what is going on in the farm there. And of course, in New Life Ministries, that is in Nyamlel, we are already, fencing what, a pre-identified piece of land where we would like to practice agriculture. So agriculture in the three institutions would be very fundamental in ensuring that the children there, the staff, have enough food, regardless of whether there are shipments from outside or not. And of course, they do not have to rely again on the cross market, which is heavily dependent on supplies from Khartoum. So that is what I am really hopeful for.
Very well said. Yes, if we can break dependency and have these locations all be food secure, that creates just a myriad of positive outcomes. So thank you, Pauline. Thank you all.
Shasha, let me hand that agriculture, through agriculture, we're also creating centers where our children are learning and the communities are learning on the best practices. And so, again, it boils down to a local capacity building, as opposed to where they entirely rely on food from outside, or where they rely on knowledge from outside, where if anything happens and then the foreigners go out, then the farm collapses. And so our farms are led by indigenous farm managers. And of course, the team outside is there to build capacity. These are also going to be centers of excellence for our students, because not everyone is going to be a teacher or a doctor. Some of us are going to get back to farming. What Pauline mentioned about Hope for South Sudan, that is the biggest area in the state. It's got one of the biggest orchards in the state. And so already the results are coming out in a very, very positive way. Back in Sudan, at our father's craft, last year, they harvested substantial amounts of food. That is the first time in history that such a thing has happened. As a matter of fact, even the community, some members of the communities, and probably even other few organizations working that area were mocking them. They never expected them to get anything. And so when they eat a bumper harvest, that was a game changer, not only to our father's craft, but many, many other people in the community. It encouraged them so much to get back into the farms. Just wanted to add on to that, and thank you.
Yes, thank you. Well, we are going to open it up to some time for questions and answers, and I will close with some opportunities that you can all be involved in. But first, let's take a few minutes. You can unmute yourself if you have questions and ask directly, or you can send questions to me in the chat. So any questions for our Kenyan team?
I have a quick question. Well, first a thank you to the leaders that are the new leaders, and as well as the more senior leaders, for all your hard work. And it's really so important what you're doing. So, and I'm sure a blessing to God. So just wondering about not just agriculture, but also like livestock. Are there initiatives for, say, goats and chickens for eggs and things like that? using the land for that kind of development of that side of the kind of farming.
Yeah, there are plans to diversify agriculture, and there are plans even to have poultry.
Great question.
We just started with the food crops.
Anyone
And
go ahead.
as we go ahead, our expectation is to diversify into other areas, because we are not only producing food, but we are also producing nutritious food. We just want to make sure that whatever is fed into the institution fits in within the category of a balanced diet. So yeah, just to answer a direct question, is we're gonna diversify. We started with cereal crops. We already actually started with 4 cows for South Sudan. Right now, they are almost 17. They're almost 11. There are also challenges which comes with keeping a lot of livestock depending on the area. So we are evaluating all this and trying to see on areas where we can move in, but slowly. Because again, as I said, there isn't a lot of knowledge. And so we are moving while building capacity to our local leaders.
Great question.
Thank you. And just a quick follow-up is, how much dependency is there on, say, pesticides and seeds and even fertilizers for the agriculture? Since that would be, is it hard to procure that, or is the volume of that that's needed substantial, and how is that done?
Well, currently we are not using fertilizer. We are also trying to limit on the usage of pesticides. And so we have also some other local ways of making organic pesticides and organic fertilizers, which at the moment is working substantially well. And so we have adopted the nutrition smart agriculture. So we are limiting very much on the use of the chemicals, and I think at the moment it's working very well. But just also to answer your question, is fertilizer is not something easy to get in the market. It's also not easy to get the pesticides. Everything has got to be imported from outside, because as I said, there isn't any infrastructure to develop such things. Fertilizer, no factories to make chemicals, and even road network does not exist in most of the places. And so even transporting some of those commodities is an uphill task. It takes quite a long time to get a truck of supplies to our centers, because they've got to pass through some really, really bad parts, and which are even infested with the bandits.
Thank you.
Great question. Other questions or comments too? We also are happy to hear feedback. Okay. Well, I will share a few opportunities for involvement, and then if in that time people think of more questions, we can come back to questions in a second. So there's a few opportunities that we would love for you to participate in. The first is we would love for you to pray. We have a medical missions trip coming up May 5th through the 8th, so that's very soon. And your prayers for that would be wonderful. There also will be at our New Life Ministry Center, they're going to have a 15-year celebration party for 15 years of ministry. And if you would like to share a personal note or a prayer or an encouraging word, you are welcome to email that to me, and I will forward that to Audrey, who will share that with the students and the teachers when they're there. So I'm going to put my email in the chat if you would like to send me that.
And Sasha, if I may, it's even
Yeah.
better than 15. It's 20 years. We're
I'm-
celebrating years at New Life Ministry. So there's going to be a big party for 2 decades of impacting lives.
Thank you for that clarification. Yeah, so this is really a phenomenal, milestone for New Life Ministries. So if there's anything you'd like to share with the students or the teachers or the staff there, please send that to me and I will share that with Audrey. My email is in the chat right now. So feel free to send that along. And then our next opportunity is a campaign that we're starting. It'll begin in June, but people can really join anytime. We're calling it Love Strong because, as we just discussed, we all need, physical activity and physical movement really helps us all to flourish on a personal level. And so the invitation here is for people who enjoy, whether it's walking, biking, running, whatever your favorite physical activity is, you can participate in that and invite people to sponsor your fitness journey. So it's a way for us to share more about the work that we're doing here and also to invite others to participate in that. So I've just shared a link in the chat to share a little bit more details about that. And there will be more emails coming out in the coming weeks. The idea is to begin June 1st, but people can join after that if they'd like, and it will run through Labor Day. And then we'll have a celebration. It'll be virtual because we're all over the United States and even beyond. But if you are interested in learning more about that, feel free to either send me an email or if you'd like to just put your name in the chat and I can follow up with you later. That would be great, but we'd love to have more participants with that. So I will open it up again to questions, whether you have questions about Love Strong or yes, so there is a question I see. Do any stories come to mind of children that have grown up in Love Ministries and graduated onto jobs in the community, government, or corporate? Great question. I will open that up and maybe even Audrey would like to answer that too, but I will open that up to our Kenya team for sure.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, we have a quite a small number because again, it's until the last few years when we started having children graduating from high school, and so one of the best examples, our case example, is already a young girl who was picked in River Mountains a few years ago, some years back though, taken to school in South Sudan, went through part of the primary school, secondary school. We took her to Uganda into a nurses training college. She finalized, went back for internship in Sudan. And as we speak, she is working in one of the biggest hospitals and the only probably existing hospital in River Mountains, which is where she comes from. And so that one does not only empower her, but also it's a motivation to other girls in their communities, seeing one of their own putting on the nursing dress, getting into a hospital, giving treatment or helping them is something which is very, very encouraging. Of course, you have others who just transitioned from universities and working in some other areas. But more so is in the next year, we are expecting a whole lot of trained nurses, trained teachers who will be offloading to their communities. They are graduating, majority of them are graduating next year, and we have other cohorts also who are going to be joining soon. So just straight to your question, yes, there are some who are doing wonderful in their communities.
Wonderful, thank you. I will ask one question to those attending. We would like to know first, if this meeting was of value for you, if this helped you to feel more connected and aware of what's happening in the field, that's our hope, is that this will help you to feel and see how valuable you are to us as our monthly supporters. So I'd love to hear if that was useful for you, and also if this time works, if we were to do a quarterly call, something like this once a quarter. I'd love to know if that's something that you would be interested in keeping in the plan. So any other feedback or questions or comments would be great. Thank you, Helen. Thank you. I appreciate your thought. Thank you. And I will share, as the newest member of Lift Up the Vulnerable, I would be so happy to get to know you guys better. So if you're interested in having a phone call or a Zoom call with me, I'd love to just know what interests you about LUV, how you got connected, why you feel compelled to support. That would be very interesting. So I'd love to connect with you as well. So thank you. Thank you, Janine and Helen and Chris and Pat and Melissa. Appreciate this. This is wonderful to hear. Thank you. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Just curious about vaccine programs. Are there vaccine programs? Are there diseases that are particularly concerning that might be treatable through such an approach? Or like, what are the biggest health challenges that are faced by the different communities? And I realize they may be different in the different locations.
Well, the challenges are enormous. Of course, again, in places where there isn't any electricity, it's so difficult even to sustain the lifespan of those vaccines. Of course, there are some aid agencies who administer vaccines, but it's really very, very limited. And so in terms of healthcare, there is great need, huge need for help in medication. And there are also very few hospitals who, help in that sector. And most of them, of course, are owned by organizations. And so most of the people in South Sudan, and even in Sudan, especially where we work in the mountains, they'll die. Most of the times you hear someone say, so and so died of unknown diseases. There isn't any way of establishing probably what was the cause of death. And so the need for medication is just big. It's huge. The gap is unimaginable as compared to any other part of the world.
And are there opportunities for partnerships with NGOs, say the Clinton Foundation or Gates Foundation, for those initiatives? Like, is there any way to bridge like connections with those larger groups that would support things like that?
Of course, opportunities are there, but the need is big. And so there isn't one time when probably there can be that, oh, we are at this level now. As I said, it's the need is so big that as much as I may not be able to quantify, I don't think even if 10% of the medical needs have been met, especially to the larger population. It's a bit different in our institutions because we have our own clinics with fully trained nurses who do take care of our children in the institutions. Because of course, with that large number of children, it's not possible to stay with them without treatment. And so every year, we track in medicine twice in a year in some places, and other places like in the Nuba Mountains, it's only once in a year because of the logistical challenges, so that they can be able to take care of our children. If we do open our clinics for the communities, then the drugs will run out as soon as we take them in because of the huge demand for medication. So yeah, the gap is huge.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions before we close out? We'll hang out for a few more minutes and then we'll let everyone get on with the rest of our day. All right, well, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, here's a question. Would you tell us about the medical mission trip?
I can jump in for that one. It's a really exciting trip that we're about to embark on. I'm going to be joining Eugenio and Eustace and Pauline with a team from all over the United States. We have about 3 doctors, a pharmacist, and a wound care specialist that's going to come, and our clinics are for the community because the children in our centers have nutrition, have medical care that Eugenio was naming, so they're healthy. So this is a free offering for people that don't have access to any level of care. It's a free clinic that our team members and churches that support them have helped to fund. So we're bringing lots and lots of supplies with us to New Life Ministry, but we're doing it in conjunction with 2 really unique and fun things. One, and this is to Kyle's question, we are going to be bringing 12 nursing students that graduated from New Life Ministry. They're all in a local nursing school, and they're going to work side by side with our medical team. Some of them are first-year students, some of them are second-year students, and some are in their final year. But we're going to all work together to serve and share Christ's love with the community, which is really exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing that take place. And then the second part is what Sasha shared, is that we're celebrating 20 years. So on May 15th, we're going to have a giant celebration with all the kids, the teachers, and members from the community celebrating what God has been doing in this ministry because of your partnership, because of the leaders and their commitment, and just celebrating how young lives are thriving, protected, safe from human trafficking. It's going to be wonderful. We'll be recording and reporting. So stay tuned. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram if we have good internet. I'm going to be doing live reports on our social media platforms, and of course we'll be sending out reports afterwards, but we'll keep you posted. But keep us in your prayers. It's a big and overwhelming task, especially for our doctors, because they'll see that more people will come than they can actually see. And even this will be the biggest medical team that we've brought, Lift Up the Vulnerable has brought. And this is the first team that's come since the pandemic. So it's a critical, exciting, and important visit. James Lualatak, who's the director there, he has specifically asked for this medical team because he knows the needs in his community are really great. So we welcome your prayers and celebration with us, and we'll keep you posted on what's happening on the ground.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. I just want to reiterate how much your partnership means to us and how important you are to us. So thank you for taking the time to join us today. And if you have any other questions or comments, my email is in the chat. I'd be happy to connect with you via phone or Zoom anytime. And I just want to say thank you again for all of your support. And thank you to our team in Kenya, who just worked so tirelessly and so diligently to ensure that our partners are well equipped to carry out this mission. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.